The vastness of space was endless, filled with millions of stars, each one holding its own secrets. Amidst this cosmic wilderness, a fleet of powerful alien warships cruised through the void. They had conquered countless worlds, laying waste to civilizations far more advanced than humans. For centuries, they had ruled the galaxies, leaving no room for doubt about their superiority. Their ships were the most advanced in the universe, their weapons capable of destroying entire planets in an instant. In their eyes, Earth was just another insignificant speck in the grand expanse of space, a planet home to pathetic creatures, barely worthy of notice. But they couldn't have been more wrong. As the alien fleet approached Earth, their leader, Commander Xevis, leaned back in his chair, surveying his screens with a smug grin. His fleet was invincible, and Earth's defenses were laughable at best. "These humans are fools," he muttered to himself. "Their ships are nothing more than scrap metal in the face of our power." His second-in-command, a cold, calculating officer named Coral, nodded in agreement. "We will obliterate them in no time, Commander. Their so-called fleet is no match for us." The alien ships swarmed in from all directions, ready to strike Earth's defenses. In their minds, they were simply going to destroy the human ships, take control of the planet, and move on to the next conquest. There was no challenge, no suspense, only the certainty of victory. Meanwhile, deep within Earth's defense network, a lone ship stood ready. The Intrepid, an old and battered vessel, its hull scarred from years of battle, drifted silently in space. It had been refitted with the most advanced weapons and cloaking technology humanity could muster, technology that the aliens would never have expected from such a primitive race. The ship's captain, Commander Graves, stared out of the viewport, watching the massive alien fleet on the horizon. Despite the odds, there was no fear in his heart, only determination. He turned to his crew, his face lined with the weight of many years spent defending Earth from alien threats. "They think we're weak," he said quietly. "But we got one thing they'll never expect. We fight smarter, not harder." His voice carried through the dimly lit command room, reaching every member of the crew. They had trained for this moment for years, knowing they were the last line of defense for their planet. The fate of Earth rested on their shoulders. Commander Graves knew that this battle was not just for victory, it was for survival. If they failed here, humanity would cease to exist. "We've upgraded the Intrepid with cloaking devices that can shield us from their sensors. Our new energy weapons are powerful enough to tear through their shields, but we need to get in close. We take them by surprise, and we strike hard. There's no room for mistakes." He glanced at each of his officers, all of whom nodded grimly in agreement. The tension in the room was palpable, but Graves could see the resolve in their eyes. The crew was ready. Even though the Intrepid was old, its crew was not. They had trained under the harshest conditions, surviving battles that most humans wouldn't even dare to imagine. But this was the moment they had prepared for. With a final glance toward the alien fleet, Commander Graves gave the order. "Initiate cloaking sequence. Prepare for the first strike." The Intrepid slowly powered up, the hum of its engines barely audible as it activated its cloaking devices. The ship faded from view, becoming invisible to the alien sensors. It drifted silently towards the heart of the alien fleet, the only thing standing between Earth and total annihilation. The alien ships continued their approach, unaware of the human ship moving silently among them. The entire fleet was focused on Earth, each ship ready to unleash its devastating firepower. But none of them noticed the tiny Intrepid moving through their ranks. Then, without warning, the silence was shattered. The Intrepid appeared from the cloak, its weapons charging in an instant. Before the aliens could react, the human ship unleashed its first strike, a powerful burst of energy that tore through the shields of the nearest alien warship. The alien ship, taken completely by surprise, didn't even have time to retaliate before its entire hull disintegrated in a brilliant explosion. A moment of absolute chaos erupted as the shockwaves spread through the surrounding ships, causing them to veer off course. Impossible. Commander Xevish shouted from his command ship, his eyes wide with disbelief. What kind of technology is this? They can't have. The alien fleet began to panic, their superior technology failing them as one of their largest warships was wiped out in a single hit. The silence that followed the explosion was filled with uncertainty. Coral, his second in command, looked at the screen in shock. It's human technology. But how? We've never seen anything like this before. Graves' voice crackled over the comms, calm but full of confidence. You've underestimated us, Hexevis, and now you'll see the full extent of our power. His crew worked swiftly, unleashing another barrage of fire that hit one alien ship after another. Each strike landed with deadly accuracy, and the alien ships, which had once been invincible, were now scattered and vulnerable. The chaos spread quickly through the alien fleet, each captain scrambling to regroup, but it was too late. The humans had already gained the upper hand. As the Intrepid weaved through the destruction, Graves watched the unfolding battle with a grim satisfaction. But there was no time to celebrate. This is just the beginning, he muttered. We can't let up now. We need to finish what we started. Coral's voice came over the intercom again, more frantic this time. Commander, we have incoming fire. They're retaliating with everything they've got. A series of explosions rocked the Intrepid, but the ship held together, its hull reinforced by years of upgrades. The crew continued their work without hesitation, knowing that every second mattered. The alien fleet might have been thrown into disarray, but they were not finished yet. Commander Graves knew the real battle had only just begun. He could see it in the eyes of the crew. This was a fight for survival, and they weren't going to back down. As the battle raged on, the question echoed through the minds of both sides. Who was the real underdog here? The aliens had once seen humans as weak, insignificant. Now the aliens were the ones fighting for their lives. And Commander Graves, he wasn't about to let Earth go down without a fight. The alien fleet had been thrown into disarray after the unexpected strike from the Intrepid. For the first time in their long history, they were faced with an opponent who didn't bow down, who didn't tremble in fear. Instead, they were met with a force unlike anything they had ever encountered. Commander Xevis stood in the control room of his flagship, his eyes narrowed with fury. He had never imagined that a human ship could inflict such damage. He had laughed at the humans earlier, dismissing them as nothing more than primitive beings with no chance against his superior fleet. But now he could feel the anger rising within him. Prepare for full retaliation, he ordered, his voice cold and harsh. Send every ship in our fleet after them. The humans will learn their place. Coral, standing beside him, looked at the screens in disbelief. Commander, they're not responding the way we expected. Our ships are being torn apart with every strike. Don't let them get to you. Xevis snapped, his eyes flashing with anger. They may have caught us off guard, but this ends now. The aliens were confident in their firepower, sure that they could overwhelm the Intrepid with sheer numbers. They thought that after one devastating blow, the human ship would crumble under the pressure. They fired relentlessly, sending wave after wave of missiles and energy blasts toward the Intrepid, believing it to be only a matter of time before the human vessel ran out of energy or had to retreat. But the humans had other plans. As the first wave of alien missiles neared, the Intrepid activated its cloaking device once again. The alien fleet was too slow to adjust, too arrogant in their assumption that they had already won. The Intrepid vanished from sight, just as it had before, and the aliens, now desperate, began firing blindly into the void. Commander Graves sat at the helm of his ship, calm under pressure. He could feel the tension, but he had no doubt in his mind that his crew was ready. They had faced impossible odds before, and this time would be no different. Cloak us and move into position, he ordered, his voice steady. Once they're within range, we strike. His crew members worked quickly, activating the ship's advanced missile systems and preparing the next phase of their attack. Every second counted, and they knew that a single mistake could cost them everything. The Intrepid moved silently through space, its cloaking device rendering it invisible to the aliens. The alien ships continued to fire their missiles into the empty void, believing they were still engaging their enemy. But the Intrepid was already among them, positioned right in the heart of their formation. And then, without warning, the Intrepid struck again. Missiles shot out from the hidden ship, their trajectory aimed perfectly at the alien ships. The energy they unleashed was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. One after another, alien ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, their shields unable to hold up against the force of the human missiles. The Intrepid moved swiftly through the chaos, firing shot after shot, each hit causing more destruction in the alien ranks. The first alien ship was hit in its midsection, the explosion tearing it apart in a cascade of fire and debris. It was followed by another, then another. The Intrepid had become a ghost in the battlefield, striking from all angles with precision, and the alien fleet began to falter under the relentless assault. In the chaos, Siva's voice came through the comms again, this time more frantic. "How are they doing this? What kind of technology is this? We have to crush them now." He knew they were running out of time. His ships were being destroyed faster than he could issue commands. But it was not just the advanced weapons that were catching the aliens off guard. It was the humans' tactical brilliance. Commander Graves had studied the alien fleets for years, learning their strategies, understanding their weaknesses. The aliens relied too heavily on their size and strength, assuming that they could crush any enemy by sheer force. But Graves had been preparing for this day, and now the aliens were feeling the full force of human ingenuity. As the Intrepid continued its assault, Commander Graves felt a flicker of hope. He had watched too many battles lost before this one, seen too many sacrifices, but today it was different. Today the underdogs were rising. The aliens were not the only ones in the midst of chaos. As the battle escalated, one of the alien ships got too close to the Intrepid. And that's when the close quarters combat began. The alien ship was much larger and stronger, but the humans had something that the aliens didn't: speed and agility. The Intrepid used its superior maneuverability to get behind a massive alien ship, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts that tore through its engines, causing it to spiral out of control. The alien crew scrambled to regain control, but it was too late. The ship broke apart, its remains scattered across space in a violent explosion. The humans' relentless strikes had turned the tide of the battle. Hevis could hardly believe his eyes. His fleet, once so confident in its superiority, was now struggling to hold its ground. He had underestimated humanity, and now it was too late to reverse the damage. "Commander, they're not stopping," Coral said, her voice trembling. "Their attacks are relentless. We've lost too many ships." Graves' voice crackled over the comms again, his tone unwavering. "You thought we were weak. You thought we were pathetic. But now you know what happens when you underestimate us. You're not facing a defeated species anymore. You're facing the last line of defense for our world." The Intrepid continued to weave through the alien fleet, each missile strike sending shockwaves through the enemy lines. The once proud alien fleet, the ones who had laughed at Earth's meager defenses, were now on the back foot, retreating in the face of an unrelenting human assault. The question that had been lingering in the minds of both sides was becoming clearer with every passing moment. Could humanity really win this fight? Could the underdog human species, with their broken ships and outdated technology, really stand a chance against the might of the alien empire? As the last of the alien ships began to retreat, Commander Graves knew that this battle was only the beginning. The aliens had underestimated humanity once, and it had cost them dearly. But now, the humans had a chance to prove that they could rise above their supposed limitations, to fight not just for survival, but for victory. As the Intrepid soared through space, its crew victorious but still vigilant, Graves couldn't help but feel a spark of pride. The underdogs had risen. And now, the real battle had begun. The stars outside the Intrepid seemed distant and cold as Commander Graves stared out at the battlefield. The eerie silence was broken only by the hum of the ship's systems. For a moment, everything felt too calm, almost like the calm before a storm. His crew had been victorious so far, but there was still a long road ahead. The alien fleet had been knocked off balance, but they were far from defeated. Phoebus, their ruthless commander, was still out there, and he wasn't going to give up so easily. Graves glanced around the bridge. His crew was tense, each member focused on their stations, but there was something different today. Something in the air felt heavy. A growing sense of unease had settled in, and it wasn't just because of the battle. It was because of Bonner. Bonner had been with the Intrepid since the beginning. He was more than just a soldier. He was the heart of the crew. His optimism, his courage, had kept them going through the toughest times. He had a knack for calming the most nervous of the crew, lifting their spirits when things looked darkest. Bonner was the kind of person who could make anyone believe in victory, even when the odds seemed impossible. But now he was gone. The Intrepid had just launched a successful attack on one of the alien ships, but as the alien vessel exploded in a fiery blaze, something went horribly wrong. A chain reaction from the blast caused another ship nearby to release a devastating shockwave. The force of the explosion was too strong for the Intrepid to avoid. Bonner had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. The blast had taken him, along with several other soldiers, in an instant. The news hit the crew like a wrecking ball. The bright, unwavering spirit that had guided them for so long was extinguished in one horrible moment. The bridge was silent for several long seconds as each crew member absorbed the loss. Graves felt his heart sink as he saw the looks on the faces of his crew. Bonner's death wasn't just a loss of one soldier. It was a loss for the entire mission, a loss for humanity. It was Lieutenant Ava who spoke first, her voice breaking the silence. "We can't let this be for nothing. Bonner wouldn't want us to fall apart now." Her eyes were red, but her resolve was clear. "We've come too far to stop." Graves nodded slowly, feeling the weight of his own grief. But there was no time to mourn. Not yet. They had a battle to win. His crew needed him now more than ever. Bonner's sacrifice had to fuel their fire, not break them. "We honor Bonner's memory by fighting harder," Graves said firmly. "We owe him that. We owe all of humanity that." As the crew rallied around his words, they returned to their stations, each of them determined to push forward. The mission was far from over, and the aliens were far from beaten. They had to keep fighting, not just for survival, but to make Bonner's death mean something. Meanwhile, aboard the alien flagship, Commander Xavis was seething with frustration. His once mighty fleet had been devastated by the humans. The audacity of the Intrepid, its cloaking devices and advanced weaponry, had caught them off guard. Every time they thought they had the humans on the ropes, the Intrepid would strike back harder, smarter. Xavis had underestimated them. He had thought the humans were weak, nothing more than a nuisance, a species to be crushed under his heel. But now he saw something different. The humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting with purpose, with a relentless drive that he hadn't expected. Their ship, the Intrepid, was a constant thorn in his side, and his fleet was losing ground. He knew that if they didn't act quickly, the human resistance could become more than just a threat. They could become a movement, one that could turn the tide of the war, not just for Earth, but for every corner of the galaxy. Xavis wasn't going to let that happen. He called for his officers. "Prepare the final line of defense," he said coldly. "We will show them what true power is. It's time to end this." Xavis wasn't relying on conventional tactics anymore. He was going to bring out the worst his fleet had to offer. The alien flagship, already massive and terrifying, would deploy an experimental weapon, a device capable of disabling the Intrepid's cloaking technology and sending it into a spiral of uncontrollable chaos. This weapon, still untested, was the last card they had to play. If it worked, it would ensure their victory. If it failed, it would be the end of Exivus and his fleet. Back on the Intrepid, Graves stood at the helm, watching the alien ships closely. The intensity of the battle had reached a boiling point. The aliens were getting desperate, but he had no idea what they were preparing. "We need to be ready for anything," Graves said to his crew, his voice low but commanding. "We've got one shot at this. We stop their flagship. We stop them." As the Intrepid moved deeper into the heart of the alien fleet, a new wave of missiles was fired in their direction. But this wasn't just any attack. The missiles were designed to lock onto the Intrepid's cloaking signal and disable its technology. Graves' instincts kicked in. The Intrepid veered sharply, avoiding the missiles, but the aliens were relentless. They wouldn't stop until they had neutralized the Intrepid. Then the unexpected happened. A massive blast from the alien flagship's weapon collided with the Intrepid. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The Intrepid's cloaking system flickered, its systems sputtering under the intensity of the energy blast. Graves gripped the console, trying to maintain control. The ship groaned, and for the first time, the crew felt a hint of fear. Had they lost? But then, the power surged back. The Intrepid was still standing. "We're not done yet," Graves shouted over the comms, rallying his crew. "Prepare for the final strike. This is it. This is where we end this." The battle had become more than just a fight for survival. It was a fight for everything the humans stood for: their homes, their families, and the memory of those they had lost. Bonner's death had been a painful blow, but it had also sparked a fire in every crew member. They weren't fighting just to win. They were fighting to honor the sacrifices made. As the Intrepid charged forward, its final missile locked onto the alien flagship, Commander Graves knew that this would be the defining moment. Whether they succeeded or failed, it would all come down to this. The power shift had begun, and the underdogs were ready to rise, once and for all. The tension on the Intrepid was at an all-time high. Commander Graves stood at the helm, his gaze fixed on the enemy fleet, which still surrounded them in every direction. His fingers gripped the armrests of his chair, knuckles white. He could feel the weight of the battle pressing down on him. The fate of his crew, and of humanity itself, rested on his decisions now. But one thing was clear: he could not keep fighting the same way. They needed a new edge, something the aliens hadn't anticipated. That's when it hit him. He had one final card to play. Behind him, the crew worked frantically to keep the Intrepid operational, the hum of machinery and the steady pulse of the ship's heartbeat filling the bridge. There had been minor victories, but the alien fleet was still relentless. For every ship they took down, two more seemed to take its place. The Intrepid was outnumbered, outgunned, and severely damaged. But Graves had kept a secret weapon hidden: Earth's technology, something the aliens had never encountered. It wasn't much, but it was enough to turn the tide. He had withheld this weapon for this exact moment. There was no more room for hesitation. "Activate the energy cannon," Graves ordered, his voice firm, but there was a glimmer of anticipation in his eyes. The weapon would not only strike at the heart of the alien fleet, but it would also send a message. They weren't just going to fight. They were going to win. With a deep hum, the Intrepid's internal systems began to whir and pulse. The weapon, an advanced energy cannon, began charging. This was no ordinary energy blast. The cannon was designed to fire focused, high-energy beams that could bypass the advanced shields of the alien ships. It was Earth's trump card, a technology the aliens had never seen before and never prepared for. Graves watched the screens as the cannon's energy levels reached their peak. The crew members around him had a sense of nervous excitement. They could feel that something big was coming, and there was no turning back. As the target lock engaged, Graves gave a single command: "Fire." The energy blast surged through the ship, slicing through space like a laser cutting through fabric. The beam locked onto the nearest alien ship, a massive dreadnought in the middle of the fleet. The blast hit its target with such precision, that it bypassed the ship's shields entirely. The alien ship seemed to shudder for a moment, and then a violent explosion tore through its hull. Pieces of metal and debris were flung into space, glowing against the backdrop of distant stars. The Intrepid's crew cheered as the ship's first victory in this new phase of battle became a reality. But the victory was bittersweet. There was still so much more to do. However, for the first time, the aliens were beginning to realize that they weren't facing just a group of humans with primitive weapons. They were up against something much more dangerous, something they had never expected. The humans were resourceful, intelligent, and willing to fight until the last breath. The aliens, who had once believed they would wipe Earth off the map without resistance, were now beginning to panic. Back on the alien flagship, Commander Xevis stood frozen in shock. He had witnessed his ship explode in an instant, with his most trusted vessel reduced to rubble in the blink of an eye. He could feel the frustration rising inside him. How could they have lost such a powerful ship so easily? How had these pathetic humans managed to turn the table so quickly? Commander Xevis, one of his officers said, her voice trembling. This is impossible. The human's weapon, it bypasses our shields." Xevis's expression darkened, and he slammed his fist onto the console in front of him. The alien fleet was in chaos. The energy cannon had not only destroyed one of his dreadnoughts, but it had also severely weakened their position. His fleet was on the brink of collapse, and he had no idea how to recover from this. But Xevis wasn't ready to give up just yet. His pride, his authority, was at stake. He had to act fast, before it was too late. He quickly issued orders for his fleet to reassemble. There was still hope. They still had the upper hand in numbers, and he believed that if he could destroy the Intrepid, the rest of the human ships would fall apart. "Prepare the final line of defense," Xevis commanded. "We can't let them get away with this." Graves, on the other hand, knew that this victory was just the beginning. The Intrepid had a momentary advantage, but the battle was far from over. He had no illusions about the aliens' next move. They were more determined than ever to crush humanity, but now the Intrepid held the upper hand. They had taken out one of the alien flagship's ships with ease. Now it was time to take down their leader. The Intrepid maneuvered through the battlefield, cloaking itself as it moved deeper into the alien fleet. Graves' plan was simple. They would use the energy cannon again, this time targeting the alien flagship directly. If they could disable it, the rest of the alien forces would fall apart. But as they drew closer to the flagship, the aliens launched a final counterattack. The final line of defense had been set into motion. Thousands of missiles filled the void of space, each one homing in on the Intrepid. It was a desperate attempt to stop the humans once and for all. "Brace for impact," Graves shouted. The Intrepid moved swiftly, dodging the incoming missiles, but the pressure was mounting. Every move had to be perfect. There was no room for error. The countdown on the screen showed that the cannon was ready, but the incoming barrage was getting closer. The Intrepid weaved through the missiles with expert precision, its crew working in perfect harmony. Then, with a flash of light, the energy cannon fired again. This time, the blast hit the alien flagship directly, and the explosion was monumental. The flagship's entire shield system collapsed, and its massive hull cracked open like an egg. A massive ball of fire erupted from the heart of the ship, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The alien fleet was thrown into disarray. Commander Xevis watched in horror as his flagship was reduced to space debris. His last line of defense had failed. He had nothing left. The final battle had begun, and Commander Graves knew that this was the turning point. The aliens had underestimated humanity, and now they would pay the price. With the alien flagship destroyed, the humans had gained the upper hand, but the war was not over. There was still much to be done, but for the first time, Graves felt the weight of hope on his shoulders. The crew of the Intrepid had done the impossible. They had forced the aliens to retreat. But with Commander Xevis still alive, this battle was far from over. The human fleet had gained a victory, but it was only a matter of time before the next confrontation began. The suspense was only just beginning, and humanity was ready to face whatever came next. The battle had raged for what felt like an eternity. The human fleet, now battered but unyielding, had finally pushed the alien forces to the edge of defeat. What started as an overwhelming invasion had turned into a fight for survival, and against all odds, humanity had managed to hold its ground. But Commander Graves knew that the war wasn't over yet. There was still one last obstacle to overcome: Commander Exivus and his flagship, the heart of the alien fleet. As the Intrepid and the remaining human ships moved closer to the heart of the enemy's formation, the alien fleet seemed to be in chaos. The once imposing armada now appeared disorganized, their ships slowly being picked off one by the human forces. It was clear that Commander Exivus's confidence had crumbled. His fleet, which had once seemed invincible, was now on the verge of total destruction. Graves stood on the bridge of the Intrepid, his face hard with determination. The alien flagship was just ahead, looming in space like a massive fortress. This was it, the final confrontation. Everything had led to this moment. Graves knew the stakes had never been higher. If they didn't finish it now, there might be no Earth left to fight for. "Commander, we've taken out most of their fleet," the communications officer said. "But the flagship is heavily defended. It won't be easy to breach their shields." Graves nodded, eyes focused on the large screen before him. The alien ships were retreating, but the flagship remained a formidable fortress. The Intrepid was heavily damaged, but it still had some firepower left, just enough for this final push. "Prepare the final weapons," Graves ordered, his voice calm but carrying the weight of the moment. "We make our stand here. All ships, form up. We go for the flagship." As the human fleet gathered, each ship aligning with precision, Graves felt the full weight of his responsibility. The Intrepid had fought through countless battles, sustained heavy losses, and seen its fair share of pain, but it had brought humanity this far. Now it had to finish what it had started. The final push began. With one command, the Intrepid activated its remaining weapons. Earth's advanced technology, the secret weapon they had kept hidden, was unleashed in full force. The energy cannon fired one last time, a focused beam of pure power slamming into the alien flagship's shields. The shields flickered for a moment, but they held strong. The alien flagship was a beast, its defenses nearly impenetrable. But the humans had come prepared. "Deploy the missiles," Graves ordered. "Target their engines. We need them immobilized." A barrage of missiles erupted from the Intrepid and its allied ships, streaking across space like shooting stars. The missiles struck with pinpoint accuracy, blasting into the alien flagship's engine core. For a moment, nothing happened. But then, the massive ship's engines flared, and the entire flagship shook violently. The alien fleet had suffered crippling losses, but Exivus refused to back down. The once proud commander now stood at the heart of his flagship, staring into the screens before him. His face was pale, his hands trembling with anger and fear. His fleet was crumbling, and with each passing second, his hold on the situation slipped further. "Commander Exivus," one of his officers called, her voice shaking. "Their attacks are weakening our defenses. We must retreat or prepare for our final defense." Exivus's eyes burned with fury. He had never been one to retreat. His pride, his reputation, were all on the line. There was no way he was going to let the humans defeat him now. "No," he shouted, slamming his fist against the console. "We will stand our ground. Prepare the final counterattack." As he issued his orders, the Intrepid closed in, its engines roaring in space. Graves knew that this was the moment. One final strike, and it would all be over. The alien flagship was heavily damaged, but it still had enough firepower to turn the tide in their favor. It was time to finish this once and for all. The Intrepid moved in, using every trick in the book to avoid the incoming alien fire. The ship's cloaking systems flickered to life, disappearing into the backdrop of space. The crew was ready. Every soldier, every officer, every crew member focused on the task ahead. Then the final charge began. With a deafening roar, the Intrepid shot forward, firing every remaining weapon in its arsenal. The energy cannon unleashed its final devastating blast, aimed directly at the heart of the alien flagship. The blast struck with a force that shook the stars themselves. The flagship's shields crumpled like paper under the relentless barrage. But Sevis wasn't finished. From the flagship's underside, a massive energy weapon fired, a bright beam streaking toward the Intrepid. The crew scrambled to evade, but it was too late. The beam struck the Intrepid's port side, sending the ship into a violent spin. Alarms blared, and the lights flickered. The hull groaned under the pressure as the ship shook violently. "Hold steady," Graves yelled, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of alarms. "We're not giving up now." The Intrepid fought to regain its balance, and as it did, the human fleet rallied together. Missiles launched again, and another energy beam tore through space, hitting the flagship directly. This time, the blast was too much for the alien ship. The shields shattered, and the hull began to crack open like a dying star. Sevis watched helplessly as his flagship burned. The mighty vessel that had once been the symbol of his fleet's invincibility was now a mere wreck in the vast emptiness of space. For the first time, Sevis realized the truth. He had lost. He had miscalculated, underestimated the humans. He had ignored the one thing that made them dangerous: their determination. "No," Sevis whispered, his voice cracking. "This cannot be." With a final, devastating explosion, the alien flagship was obliterated. The remnants of its once proud form scattered across the stars. The alien fleet, now leaderless and shattered, began to retreat. There was no one left to lead them, no one left to continue the fight. The humans had done it. The crew of the Intrepid erupted in cheers, but it was a hollow victory. The cost had been high. Many had fallen, and the ship was heavily damaged. But humanity had done the impossible. They had defended their planet. Commander Graves stood at the helm, his expression grim. The battle was won, but the war had left scars on everyone. He could hear the cheers, but he could also hear the names of the fallen, their faces forever etched in his memory. Bonner, the brave soldier who had given his life for the cause. The countless others who had fought and died alongside him. Their sacrifice had not been in vain. "Humanity stands," Graves said quietly, his voice filled with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "But the fight never ends." And with that, the Intrepid drifted slowly toward the remnants of the alien fleet. The battle was over, but the war for humanity's future had only just begun. The final confrontation was over, but the cost of victory had changed everything. The galaxy would never be the same again. The silence that followed the final explosion of the alien flagship was deafening. In the vastness of space, where battles had raged, there was now nothing but the haunting stillness of a war that had been won at a high cost. As the remains of the alien fleet drifted like broken debris in the void, the human ships slowly pulled back, their crews exhausted but triumphant. The Intrepid had survived, but just barely. Its hull was pockmarked with the scars of battle, and its systems were on the brink of failure. Yet, the ship had endured. It had carried humanity through the impossible. On the bridge of the Intrepid, Commander Graves stood motionless, gazing out into space. His heart was heavy with the weight of victory. He had led his crew to a hard-won triumph, but the cost had been far greater than he had ever imagined. Bonner, the soldier who had been by his side from the very beginning, was gone. So were countless others, each one a reminder of the sacrifice that had been made. "Commander," said Lieutenant Harris, her voice soft as she approached, "the fleet's been ordered to return to Earth. We've won." Graves nodded, his gaze still fixed on the wreckage of the alien fleet. "Yes," he whispered, "but the victory feels empty, doesn't it?" Harris said nothing. The truth was, the victory didn't feel like a victory at all. It felt like a hollow triumph, a victory that was paid for in blood. The loss of Bonner weighed heavily on everyone. His name had become a symbol, a reminder of the price of war. Back in the crew's quarters, the atmosphere was somber. Soldiers moved quietly through the halls, their faces worn from the battle, but their eyes carrying the burden of their fallen comrades. They all knew the cost. They all knew that they had not just fought for themselves, but for the future of humanity. For Earth. "We did it," whispered Private Mason to his fellow soldier. "But I don't think I'll ever be able to forget Bonner's face. He was a hero." Another soldier, Corporal Daniels, shook his head. "We all lost something. But Bonner's sacrifice will never be forgotten. He gave everything for the cause. For us." The mood aboard the Intrepid was heavy with the weight of their losses. Graves, however, knew that their sacrifices hadn't been in vain. Earth had been saved, and humanity had proven itself stronger than anyone, alien or human, could have imagined. The journey back to Earth felt long and painful. As they entered Earth's atmosphere, Commander Graves stood before his crew in the briefing room. His face was grim, but his words were filled with pride. "We've won a great victory, but that victory came at a great cost. Bonner and so many others are gone. We mourn them, but we do not forget them. They gave their lives to protect humanity, and we will honor them forever. The battle for Earth may be over, but the war for humanity's future is just beginning." Graves paused, his eyes scanning the faces of his crew. "We didn't just fight for Earth. We fought for every human who's ever lived, and for every human who will ever live. We fought for a future where our children will not have to fight the same battles we fought. We fought for peace, and we fought to show the galaxy that humanity is a force to be reckoned with." His words hung in the air, filling the room with a sense of unity and purpose. They had won, but it was not the end. The war had reshaped them. It had transformed them into something stronger, something that could no longer be ignored. As the Intrepid touched down on Earth, the crew disembarked, greeted by cheers from the waiting crowds. The war was over, but the scars it had left were deep. The Earth, once vulnerable, now stood tall as a beacon of resilience and strength. Humanity had survived. Humanity had triumphed. News broadcasts around the world praised the victory, calling it the greatest military achievement in human history. But behind the headlines, there were whispers of the future. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and Earth had proven it was not to be trifled with. No longer would humanity be at the mercy of alien invaders. The universe had seen what Earth could do, and that knowledge would forever change the way humanity was perceived. Commander Graves, standing before a statue commemorating the fallen, felt the weight of his words. "We've done it," he muttered, his voice thick with emotion. "We've secured our place in the stars." But even as the celebrations echoed through the streets, the shadows of war lingered. The aliens had been defeated, but the universe was vast, and there were always new threats on the horizon. The message was clear. Humanity would never be caught unprepared again. Earth had proven that when pushed to the brink, it could rise up and defeat the greatest of foes. As Graves looked out over the horizon, he thought of Bonner and the other soldiers who had given everything for the survival of humanity. They were not forgotten. Their sacrifice would never be in vain. The galaxy now knew that humanity was a force to be reckoned with, and no matter what came next, they would be ready. To Bonner, Graves said quietly to himself, and to every soldier who fought and died for Earth, "You are the reason we stand here today." The future of humanity had changed forever. Earth was no longer a planet waiting to be conquered. It was a world that had learned to fight, to survive, and to thrive. No longer would humanity be afraid of the unknown. The message to the galaxy was clear. Earth would not bow. Earth would rise. And with that, Commander Graves and his crew walked into the future, knowing that the battle for humanity's future was not over. The fight for peace, for freedom, and for survival would continue. But they were ready. They had fought for each other. They had fought for their planet. And they would always be ready to stand tall in the face of any threat that might come their way. The story of humanity's triumph had only just begun.